Welcome back, everyone, to another Road to Paris show. And this week it is the nation who, in 2021, individual gold, in 2016, individual gold, and in 2012, the big team gold on home soil. It is Great Britain. And when I reel off those last three Olympic Games, they make it sound easy, but is it going to be as easy in 2024? Charlotte, you've done all the hard work and prep on this one. And the key to it is going to be it's not a huge volume of riders at this point. It feels pretty safe there that we can kind of narrow down one or two certainly very obvious front runners here. And then who's gonna fill that third spot, I think, is probably the most interesting part of the conversation. Do we just get stuck in there and start talking about Ben Maher and the form he's in, and he's our reigning Olympic champion? Is it that simple? What do you think?
I think we have to. The form he's in, not only that, but the horses he has. He has a string that I think every rider on the planet right now is, I wouldn't say jealous of, but would like to have in their yard. I think he has the pick of 4 or 5, if not 6 horses for Paris. I think this upcoming season is key for him to decide which horse he has. I'm sure he has a preference, but the fact that he has so much choice is just absolutely incredible.
Do you think he has a preference already? Because he's got a world championship 4th place horse in there in Baltic HB. He's
Europeans
got
too.
Europeans too, yeah, correct. So in many ways the championship horse explode. So if you are listening, you're not seeing what's on our screen right now, which is the list of the top 10 160 ELO horses. So that means that they have to have 3 5-star 160 clears in the last 12 months to be on this list, and then we rank them by their ECHA ratings ELO. I'm just going to call out the names of the top 10 horse of the riders who ride these top 10 first. We've got Ben Maher, Harry Charles, Ben Maher, Harry Charles, Ben Maher, Tim Gredley, Robert Whitaker, Scott Brash. The top 7. And if we had put in horses like Explosion W, who reigning champ, but and very, very unlikely, I think, that we're going to see him again. Balou de Reventon, maybe, I don't know. And we've seen jumping in Oliva. Older horses, like they have older horses, just not been putting in that, not been out in action as much recently. But that's one each for Ben and Harry there. They have so much firepower. But Dallas Vegas Batilli is there's nothing in it. An ELO of 752 against Faltic on 751. They're the two. It's Ben's duo there, that they're the established horses, the proven horses. It would look on analysis to be between those two, but he's always bringing through exciting youngsters. Who would you pick, Charlotte, firstly, between those first two? Any thoughts between them? Can you split them?
Coming in with the big questions very early on there, Sam. It's Dallas Vegas, obviously a lot younger, just turned 11. Faltic has all the experience of multiple championships. But I do have a soft spot for Dallas Vegas. I think very promising, already a 2-time 5-star Grand Prix winner at just 10 years old, which is incredible. And I think that Ben believes in the horse a lot. Faltic has been there, done it, but perhaps he wants to give Dallas Vegas Batilli the chance. So I think my preference goes to Dallas Vegas, but I think it's going to be a 40-60% split for me. So there's not much in it there either.
Okay, and before D, you're getting the next question, all right? I'm gonna throw this one at you. But on those two over the last 12 months, 5-star 160, Dallas Vegas bang on 50% strike rate at 5-star 160, 11 clears from 22 rounds. Faltic HB 10 clears from 19 rounds, so just slightly above 52.6%, slightly above 50%. Like those are seriously good numbers out of that volume of rounds. So they're doing it on ratings, they're doing it on statistics. But Dee, you were with me in Aachen last year when Faltic didn't want to do it at all. And is like, okay, grass arena, Aachen, maybe you can attribute between the two of them. You could differentiate there. I don't know. But that's a kind of a worry, isn't it? If you're betting on the Brits, Faltic turned up.
I think the Europeans will have settled nerves a little bit in that regard, but I think he went into the Europeans under massive pressure because the explosion news, if I'm not mistaken, the explosion news would have been in around that time. The kind of confirmation of that, was it earlier? Like certainly
a little bit earlier, yeah.
A little bit earlier, but we knew then basically that it was going to, like Faltic, I think at the time would have been the obvious next in line in a way that maybe he isn't now with Dallas Vegas. And I think he went into the Europeans under big pressure, and I think the Europeans was a big settling for Faltic. But you mentioned being a betting man on this. I think if we said to each other, and if we said to a lot of the people that we hang around with, doing a preview show on the Brits for Paris, say, well, Great Britain, one of the big nations, they're going to have, you're going to have a great shot. When Sam, you listed the medals at the outset. The first episode of of the Road to Paris series was about Ireland, a team that hasn't won, team world or team Olympic medals. The Brits are a powerhouse, really, in the sport.
Fourth most successful nation with regards to team medals at Worlds and Olympics. Germany out in front, but they're fourth on that list, and that's the one. So Ireland has individual success, but it doesn't have the team medal. And it's I mean, that CV flat, like those, to say they've had 3 gold medals at the last 3 Olympic Games for any nation in the sport of jumping, that sets a ridiculously unmaintainable bar, But I also think that where Sweden hold all 3 team gold medals currently, I think I still think that they go into the Olympics as favorites, whereas I think Britain are not in that.
Well, I've got good news for you. At the top of the show, I ran before we joined the show as of yesterday. So based on all of the results coming out of the weekend, including Wellington, including the League of Nations, but based on all of the results up until the 14th of Feb or 30th of Feb, same I think in this case, I ran the simulation for the top 3 rated horses in each side, and it wouldn't include double riders. So in this case, you'd have Tim Gredley and Madoc, who, by the way, are one of the biggest climbers. That's a big old jump to get back up to 709 alongside Point Break. They've had a really big start to 2024, and they're in the top 20 climbers on ELO globally in the first month of the year. But can I tell you where they sit in terms of the betting?
Yeah.
February 2024, win chance.
Give me the favorites. Give me the favorites win chance before you give me theirs to set in because it's going to be a very low number.
Sweden have a 15% win chance. They're currently favorite.
Oh, that's high. That is high.
And that's including King Edward, Hansen, and Indiana as the 3 that I used in the simulation. They've got ELOs of 806, 773, and 766. All 3 rated higher than the highest rated Brit. Quite a bit higher. 766 being the lowest, which is Indiana. Next in line drops down to 11%. It's the Dutch, and I'm not going to read them all through because
spoilers
this is
for
a show about. But in short, when you were setting up a show about the Brits, I wanted to run that simulation, and I thought, I wonder where they are. They're 4%. Not in the top 10. They're behind Brazil.
Are they? Yeah, well, Marlon Madolo. Yeah.
They share a win chance with Canada, a 4% win chance.
Okay, I got the number right, 4%.
Their team elo is 732 on average. Canada's is currently 739. But I'm setting it up in the context of it is great to have two big guns. And you're right, Sam. Okay, there was a Celtic question at Aachen last year, and like you can actually put it over any horse, and we know that given what we've talked about in the sport generally, like there is no horse that will, particularly in this 3-from-3 format, there's no horse that we can absolutely say, well, that one's fine. It's going to be okay. It's going to carry a lot of jeopardy. But when you need to count the 3 scores, and we know that the ELO is so closely aligned to the actuality of whether these horses jump clear or not, when you're dropping down into the low 700s or potentially even below that, looking at Hello Jefferson and Scott Brash, like it is a big old drop since this time last year. We would have seen Gothenburg last year. They were definitely plus 700. They were probably plus 715 this time last year. To be in that 662 territory and accepting Hello Jefferson is a horse that can turn it on when you want, but turn it on from 662 is a much, much lower base to be able to deliver that from. What I would say is the Brits are definitely vulnerable on team medal area. Like they're not carrying the depth that we're going to talk about with multiple other nations. We started with Ireland, a team with lots of depth. We've referenced Germany, a team with lots of depth. This isn't that team.
Sticking with Ben for a second, that's good. That is a good point, and I think there's 2 things that people will be thinking at this point. Like there are 2 medals up for grabs here, and with the 3-from-3 format, this emphasis on reliability, no drop score, which we see in all the Nations Cups and at all the other championships, we see the drop score. And it's needed in jumping. Time and again you see like these horses, even King Edward, kind of 2 rails down, and that can be highly expensive to any team. We saw worse than that. We saw even more dramatic than that in Tokyo, with France going in with a clear, and I think even a rail to win Team Gold and to beat Sweden. But Penelope Leprevaux didn't complete the round. So that was no medal. That was from looking like gold was a 50% chance or more to nothing. And then you got to think, okay, well, what, individual as well. And Ben Maher it's phenomenal the rate at which he brings through new horses, and one that's not on this list on our screen yet because they don't have the 3 5-star 160 clears just yet. But they're winning Grand Prix, even 3-star Grand Prix out in the US, which wouldn't be affecting the ELO. The ELO is getting affected at 4 and 5-star level, 150 and above. But Anjou de Grisienne for Ben, already as a 10-year-old on an ELO of 720, which makes it the 6th highest rated 10-year-old in the world currently. Is that the joker in the pack, Charlotte? Do you think this feels to me like a joker in the pack that could just, I actually have to look back at this, but could even be feels like it's on a better starting point than where Faltic would have been the year he went on to finish 4th at the World Championships?
I do have a bit of a soft spot for Anjou. I think in her 5-star 160 debut, she finished on the podium in a World Cup. It's just like she's only jumped 4 5-star 160s in her entire career. She jumped 2 of them clear. Those 2 times she either won or finished 2nd, which is just an incredible achievement for a horse that young. Yeah. On the other hand, though, I think, would she perhaps be too young for the Olympics, for Paris, especially knowing that Ben has Faltic, has Dallas Vegas, has Ginger Blue, has Point Break, same age as Anjou, but has those other more experienced horses in his string? Would he perhaps tell Anjou to sit tight one more year, aim for the Europeans in 2025, and take one of the more experienced horses for Paris? I think he would be thinking more along those lines. But on the other hand, I would love to see her have the chance, because I do have a soft spot for her, and I think that she's very talented, and there are a lot of good things to come for her.
On the 10th of February 2022, a young Faltic had an ELO of 677 and then went on, and by September that was up at 756. That would have been after the World Championships. So this horse is way ahead already of Faltic, who went on to a championship. I take the point. I think when you've got two horses with more experience and one horse with a couple of championships already under the belt, successful championships under the belt, it's hard to pick. Look, that's the dynamic. That is the dynamic of the Brits. Their talisman, the reigning Olympic champion, Ben Maher. He is not going to be favourite going into the Olympic Games to retain his crown. I would say that with confidence, but you would be scared laying him. He is definitely going to be a player because he's got so much firepower. And I think the interesting thing between now and Paris is we know all things, unless some kind of natural disaster happens, he's going to be there, but it's who is he going to be there with? I think that's the interesting thing that's going to evolve over the next few months. I think that's going to be really interesting to watching those horses with that in mind, particularly things like Nations Cups and things like that. If he does aim them at it, being able to back up big 5-star 160 rounds and not just jumping in single round competitions and stuff like that. Fascinating. Harry Charles is gaining experience at a remarkable rate. Already an Olympian, part of the World Championship team that nicked the bronze medal at the World Championships. I still think, that was still such an incredible roller coaster of an afternoon, that team competition in Herning in 2022, that World Championship. The Belgians and the Germans disappearing, the Irish getting so close, and then the Netherlands and Great Britain swooping late to take the team medals at the World Championships. Harry's played his role there, and he would have done those two championships that I've mentioned with Romeo 88. Still in the picture for sure. Like he's Harry's number 2 horse here on ratings with an ELO of 728. Casco Bleu has overtaken him, and he chose Casco Bleu for the Aachen Grand Prix. I thought that was the first big kind of statement with Casco stepping up to that kind of a level. I thought he handled most of the track. I think it was the combination that day that caught them out. And he's got Ireland Blue here as well. But another rider, I think it's hard enough to call at this stage who his Paris horse is. Anyone feel differently?
I agree, because these 3 horses on this list, they have experience, and Harry's done incredible things with them already. But I think the horse to watch for me for Harry isn't actually on this list, and it's Sherlock, who he won the La Coruña World Cup with, who he finished 3rd with in Bordeaux in the World Cup. And that horse is really stepping up, only on an ELO of 669 at the moment, so really not even up there in the 700s. But the way he's shaping up, the way he delivers when it matters in a World Cup like that, I like that, and I think that could be very interesting for Harry. Equally, Ireland Blue, she's 13, but hadn't made her 160 debut, I think, until Aachen last year, and did very well there in Aachen. I think she finished on a podium in one of the 160s, or in the jump off at least. So she's very interesting. But then again, would you argue with the experience that Romeo and Casco Bleu already have? And then, of course, Balou-Reventon is competing again, 18 years old, but Harry has him in Oliva this weekend. So that's very interesting too. Would he be one of the, I don't want to say first, but the first 18-year-old horse that we've seen in a major championship in a good while? Like, that could be an incredible story to make that comeback.
It will be an incredible master plan that I think Peter Charles and Harry Charles have had to basically have a very limited time together in terms of forming a partnership last year, but feeling enough to say we have one goal in mind, and that is Paris next year. Like, to have that foresight, that would have been about 18 months before Paris, to say we felt enough here. This horse is 17. This horse has done a lot with a lot of different riders, has already given so much to the sport. But if there's a dance left, this dance needs to be at Paris. And I think it would be incredible. The two things that I would be hoping, I think, to see Anjou, the young horse for Ben, coming through potentially. I also would echo your thoughts on Sherlock there. I think that gives a freshness. Like, D, you're talking about that 4% win chance. Like, that's a hard feeling to go into a championship feeling kind of buoyant and bullish about. I think if the Brits can't, and I think particularly if it's Ben and Harry bringing through an exciting new potential to freshen up at least the potential in those win chances, because if they're going in with the exposed horses that we know, there's not much potential to find there. You're just relying on the sport of show. You're just going in. We know their level, and you're hoping that they produce their best day, and you're hoping that the others don't. And it's just a less exciting way to go into Olympic Games than thinking that actually this horse could still be ahead of the ratings and stuff at this stage, that they could still be on the up.
Also, just one thing I want to flag: isn't it incredible that I think, how old is Harry? He's 24. That we are putting him on almost the same level as Ben Maher, the reigning Olympic champion. That we have two riders that we are almost sure of that will be going to Paris, and one of them is 24-year-old Harry Charles. I think that is an incredible achievement to be in that position at such a young age, to have built that string and to have the record of performances built up that you are not sure, nothing's ever 100% sure, but to be in such a great position going into an Olympic year is just incredible to me.
Go on, D.
I was going to say, I think you can be sure that he's going to Paris unless of a rider injury. You can be pretty sure that Ben and Harry are going to be there. I love the conversation around who they take. There's three great stories in the narrative for Team GB and the road to Paris. Who does Ben take? Who does Harry take? And who's number 3? And all three of those are worth following. Like, all three of those have so much depth in them. Like, you can pick the Baloo story, Sam, which I completely agree. I mean, the courage, Charlotte, when you mention Harry being in this company and this position, like the guidance of Peter here, the setup that Harry will have around him, to get the string together, to keep the string fit, and to slowly progress them. We've spoken to him a couple of times, Sam, and like, he's pretty agnostic as to whether it's global champions or World Cup or the US or wherever. Like, he's a performance-driven guy, which is he goes where he has to go to improve these horses at the different stages of their career. That's impressive at his age, and it's an important part of his setup, I would say. But you're right. I mean, for Harry to be there, I think picking one of these, if it's Baloo that goes, it's an amazing story. If it's Sherlock that goes, it's an amazing story. And then you've got multiple, top horses and maybe more obvious horses in between in Cascableu and Romeo. I think you can say the same for Ben. You've been through it, and then I would bring it to the third big narrative, which is who's gonna join these two boys.
The final point I would make, because it's never gonna on all the other countries that we preview, we'll be talking about the Netherlands, who have quite a similar profile in terms of as a nation. It feels like 2 on the team sheet, and you're trying to fill the third spot. And obviously it's always open, like the sport of jumping, the pressure that's on you, not being able to, expectations versus actual expected outcomes. It's tough in this game. It's very, very tough to win medals. But the thing that will never be as clear as it will be because of the last 25 minutes when we've been talking about Ben and Harry and their depth of string, you gotta, like, what does it take to be successful in this sport? And I think every young rider setting out will just think about riding a horse and being a horse person. And of course, for 90 seconds at the pinnacle of the sport, when your time comes and your day comes, yes, you need to ride well. You need to be on a good horse. But it's getting there, and you need a team, and it's been like, I'm terrible at it, because it comes with pressure. Like the people that have put the horses around underneath Ben and Harry, and the people that believe and back them. For anyone who thinks that, and so many people will be jealous and envious of that. And the point I would make to counter, of course, it's easy to look at them at the top there. It's easy to be jealous. That's the easiest thing, and that's the most natural thing. And of course, and you're saying, yeah, look, aren't they lucky? It's not luck. It's you've got to be able to make that happen. And secondly, and I think this is the more important thing, the pressure to be able to have the temperament to handle that. I think managing the different horses for the different owners. Obviously the amount of faith that's been shown in you and stuff like that. And it's just, when we mentioned Harry's age, I think it's not just as an athlete, it's the business pressure as well, that I would take my hat off the fact that he can handle that. And I'm sure, and that's why riders talk about teams and stuff like that. And of course there's a team around helping to deal with that. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to, it's not even 90 seconds, it's 70 seconds every Sunday, every Friday afternoon when the Nations Cup kicks off, or a Saturday afternoon with GCTs, wherever you're choosing to fire your bullets. You got to deliver, and there's pressure on you to deliver. I think it's class. I think it's phenomenal to see a rider doing that. And there's not many sports. There's not many other sports where you have that. It's you and your golf club and your golf ball and you on the pitch and stuff like that. There's not many sports where you are riding, someone else has written a 7-figure check potentially for a horse and continues to fund you all the time. You'll have sponsors, of course, you'll have sponsors, but I think that's a slightly different thing as well. Like, you'll have a sponsorship
as long as you're jumping clear frequently.
Yeah,
and you're able to fulfill those commitments, like sponsors, it's not a, I think patrons, like the sponsor side of revenue requires you to be on social media, have social media teams, and have, be able to speak, all those kind of, like, it's another skill set. Like, I would include it in what you're talking about, in that big team and that big varied business, social, commercial mindset that you need outside of the sport.
That was my last tangent. Right, number 3. Here we go. We've got 3 names. We've got Tim Gredley on screen. Tim came over to Dublin. Actually, I think you've been saying on this channel, on the Jumping Podcast, when we were covering Dublin, that was a good opportunity for him to step up, and he was kind of the senior rider, I think, in the group that day. And again, it's not. None of the next 3 combinations that we're talking about, particularly the third that we'll get to, are that, like, they're not that unexposed. They're not in the Anjou de Grisienne territory, I think, where this could be this huge upward curve and we could be talking about a third superstar. I think it feels to me like someone's got to put their hand up and go and be really solid in the spring season and just be solid. They're all kind of already at that level. I know, Charlotte, you have a 4th name who's not a young gun himself, but has a new horse underneath him. Could that maybe is one to come in and fly over the thing? But of the 3 that's there, we've got Tim Gredley, we've got Robert Whittaker with Bermento. The talking point for me is Hello Jefferson and Scott Brash. Okay, so because this has been, and because this is I think this is the first time we're going to a major championship and we're not talking about the 3. We're not talking about the guaranteed trio. It's just which one of their horses. And Scott maybe with Hello Valentino could get there. But Jefferson, I want to talk about. I think he suffers from Scott has the opposite problem to Harry and Ben right now in that he doesn't have the string. The other two have the biggest strings on the circuit. He doesn't. And I think like Jefferson's elo has now dropped down to 662, which is low, and it is low. But I would say it's potentially low because Scott's got to keep ranking points. He wants to be at the big shows, and he probably just has to ask more of Jefferson than maybe ideally he doesn't get to rest him as much as maybe he wants to. But given a rest, do we still see enough? The question then is, do we still see enough spark from Scott and Jefferson to think bit of a freshen up at the right time? I'd still back him. Is that the feeling?
I'm on the fence. I find it hard right now, the way things stand, to back Hello Jefferson in Paris. I think if we're going to see Scott in Paris, I think it might be on Hello Valentino. Yeah. They're coming off the back of a 4-star Grand Prix win at Sunshine Tour, which is also not nothing. They started Hello Valentino started last year very, very strongly, perhaps had a bit of a wobble throughout the season, but is he 10 now? Yes.
Yeah.
He's only 10 now. I think if we're seeing Scott in Paris, I think it's more likely to be on Hello Valentino than to be on Hello Jefferson. Hello Jefferson, already 15 years old. He's asked a lot of him over the years. Are we thinking that it's becoming a little bit too much? I'm not sure. But his form right now, I would suggest that perhaps. And I would find it hard to back him for Paris.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, look, I think it was 5 clears from over 20 runs when I was looking at the stats earlier. Like it's clear that they're not in the form that they've been in before. And again, the angle I was going with is I just wonder if freshening up, and maybe a little bit the same with Hello Valentino, who's an exciting young horse. I saw him out in Miami, but again, kind of just had to play that number 2 role and go on the 5-star circuit and just throw a young 9-year-old in at top level, and some of them are ready for it. But that's that experience, and so there was a dip. It started off promising, bit of a dip in the season, but they're back. Like in that experience, like that season under their year, that's important. If you are going to bring a 10-year-old to an Olympic Games, they're the second. Valentino's the second highest rated British 10-year-old. That's a kind of an important age. It's an age where you've broken through, or you're breaking through, if not broken through, and you're ready for the top one, the top level. I think you could go to a championship. I think it's the earliest you'd want a championship horse, but we see championship 10-year-olds. D, thoughts?
I think it's fascinating. Like, I really like the idea of Valentino, if I'm honest. I think you're right, Charlotte, in terms of where it kind of ties in a little bit with the Anjou and the Sherlock situation, in that it is possible to see this British team, albeit with the same 3 riders that we will be talking about in those cases. It is possible to see a really young, exciting team, but it feels, if I'm honest, it feels like we're talking about more of a Europeans team, and we're talking about those 3. I think Valentino could make up the 3, but no matter who makes up the 3, I think the reality is the solid spring season, the unspectacular but solid spring season for whoever is number 3 feels like is what's going to. I think Scott's the most likely to be in the driving seat because of the rider experience. That's not taken away from Tim or Robert, but Scott Rash is pretty special in terms of what he's achieved this decade. I think the truth is, I don't know which way it goes between probably those 4 horses, and I think we would be silly as well to rule out any emerging star from putting their hand up, because I think it is just going to be a solid if someone else steps up, I think one big result plus some solid 150, 155 form could be enough. By the way, Sam, we saw this a little bit with the Swedish team potentially going into the hurling World Championships. Maybe when Jens Fredriksson joined that team, it was at a time when we probably didn't think that it would be Jens and Mark and Cosmopolit who held together when they needed to. I think it was ahead of Indiana and Malin when they needed to. Of course, hurling 3 from 4, wasn't it? Rather than the 3 from 3 format that we'll face. Whether that decision would have been made before that Jens and Mark and Cosmopolit would be the 3, I don't know. But there is still the potential, I would say, for someone, whether it's one of these 3 or one of these 4, and I still say maybe even a little bit beyond, that there is still the possibility that someone will surprise us and be able to deliver us a solid spring and make up that third spot.
Speaking of, right, 2 more names to talk about. Another one, a 10-year-old, so almost identical rating to Hello Valentino, and it's e-banking for Joseph Stockdale. Joseph would have 2 horses in the mix, I think, as well, with Equine America Cacharel, who'd have a higher rating of 691. So he's played a role. He's got plenty of team experience. I think your point is strong on the Scott situation. By the way, I think if we're comparing horses, and there's, even if there's a little bit in it, certainly if there's not much in it, I think Scott's getting the nod. I think that's an obvious enough statement. But I would say even, he definitely brings an advantage in terms of getting on the pitch. Joe Stockdale is there and got off to a good round or a good start to the season in Abu Dhabi in that new Longines Liga Nations. That's got to be a positive, and that's another 10-year-old. So e-banking coming through, that could be that's one of the other potential up and coming ones. We love potential. I think we're in danger because I'll always flag this on things. We love potential because you overemphasize it, and every horse, every kind of potential star come through. It doesn't matter what sport it is. It's just not horses, it's humans too. You're like, oh, they could be, and your mind goes for that prospect theory. You're just like, oh yeah, could be it. I think you're clutching it. I think you're not as strong as you want to be when you're relying on really hoping that the potential comes through because you need it to. But Joe Stockdale's got another one there, and then final one, Charlotte, John Whitaker, new horse, Arcana de Riverland.
Yes, so he got the ride on Arcana de Riverland from French rider Juliette Faligot. They have been very successful at 3 and 4 star level mainly. They've won a couple 3-4 star Grand Prix, but never really got the chance to be on a French championship team because they have a lot of depth. So I think Juliette saw a chance for her horse to compete at the Paris Olympics and trusted her to John Whitaker. They only started, I think they started the season in Belgium in a 2-star and, just 145, getting some miles together. But that could be potentially interesting for John. It would be incredible to see John in another Olympics. He has all the experience in the world. So to see him get the chance is I think it's great. I think it's beautiful. On the other hand, Arcana never reached an ELO of over 700. She's currently on 637, so that's pretty low. But, it's a new pairing. When they get to know each other, you never know the potential. It could be incredible to see John back up there. Harry, Ben, John. What a team that would be.
In that case, I don't think the solid form will be enough. I think for an Arcana, and I agree with you, the kind of fairy tale story. I think you do need a big win. Need something that you need a big win and then a little bit of solid form. I think probably the same, Sam, with Joe Stockdale. I mean, a little bit closer in terms of it's a 691 elo. When we're showing that list of the top 10, they're 160 elos. So it is very likely, and Charlotte, I know we have the table of who's missing from the list, but it's very likely that as those, by the time we're reviewing this in March, that 160 list has shifted a little bit because we've got that 160 form in there, but it's with a degree of intuition as well, which is that if you haven't got 3 clear 160s over a 12-month period, I think it's a fair filter to put on. That's not to rule out. It's not to rule out some of the younger horses. I think by March, if we're looking at this again, we might see a slightly different list. But I think Arcana, the narrative and the fun of following a John Whittaker story like that is if you could get the big win, everything. And this, by the way, counts for everybody. The same with the same with Joe Stockdale's too. If you could put a big win on the board, I think right now, because of the openness of that third slot, I think we're having a slightly different conversation. The exact same for Jefferson. If Jefferson was to go and put a win on the board, I think he kind of almost feels like he'd cement it. He'd go forward again.
Relentless consistency, performance on demand, no drop scores. I get you. I think to get selected, I do think, because you're trying to win people over,
trying to get noticed. You're trying to step out of a group, step out of a group.
Yeah, I think our job is to give you the cold hard analytics and facts, but and you want relentless consistency in quality competitions. 1984 was the second last time that the Brits won a team medal. So they won the team gold in 2012. That had ended a 28-year wait from LA back in 1984. And of course, John Whittaker was on the team with his brother Michael. So can someone please, this is a call for someone, please get John Whittaker a nice 7-8-year-old, maybe even a 6-year-old for LA 2028, because to win a team medal at the Olympic Games at LA in 84 and again in 2028, that would be some fair achievement, wouldn't it? Fairy tales. Folks, thanks for joining us on this one. Derm and Charlotte, thank you very much. That, folks, is the look ahead to Paris 2024 for Team GB early doors. Thank you.